Hey there, and welcome back to the episode of A Cup of Joe. My name is Joe Escobedo, and with me on the show is Jaslyin Qiyu. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes.
Close enough. Thanks so much for being on the show, Jaslyin. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Joe.
Wonderful. So for those of you who are not familiar, Jaslyin is the Senior Director of Southeast Asian Marketing for JLL. So, like I said, today we just want to dive into a couple of your expertise, one of which is content marketing, looking at it from a regional perspective, diving into what to like locally. And then the big question always everyone's mind is how do you get that going within an organization? You have so many moving parts, so many departments to work with. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick it off. And yeah, so you've been running regional marketing for a while now. I'd love to get your thoughts in terms of your approach when you're developing your own regional content strategy.
Sure. So where do I even start? I guess the bigger the organization, of course, the more complex it gets. And also depending on how it's being set up, reporting lines and who ultimately makes the final decision in terms of what we're talking about in the market, what are the problems that clients are facing in the market. It has a lot to do with the politics, if you want to call it that way, ultimately of how we want to position ourselves. But aside from that, I think it's important to understand, first and foremost, why we're even doing this. Essentially, it's not for our own organization. It's essentially for our clients. Clients want to be helped. They want to understand different perspectives. They want to hear from different perspectives, different companies, different consultancies, for example, because there's a lot of noise in the market right now. So how do we differentiate ourselves with actual perspectives and actual insights? And we can't do any of that if we do not first have an understanding of what is keeping the clients awake at night. So first and foremost, I think it's important that companies, sales force, business leaders, they talk to clients on a day-to-day basis. They understand the client sentiment and the pulse out there. It's not just conjuring something up in the air because I think and I think this and I think that. But it's essentially because clients are telling me this. They're picking up the phone, they're talking to them on WhatsApp or Messenger or whatsoever on calls, and now virtually all the time because of COVID. So with that understanding, then you can feed that information back to your marketing leaders, to the marketing team, to look at the insights, to look at what are the pain points, and then we can see what are some of the solutions that we have in the organization that can help to address these pain points and articulate that into a very nice high-level kind of proposition messaging that can be communicated quite broadly across different channels, different touch points, and different formats. So yeah, that's how I would get started. And normally I would get started before I even talk about the content strategy.
So once again, some very good points, which I think not a lot of organizations think about is the why you're doing it. I think a lot of organizations do it, and I talk about this a lot in talks, is this sake of creating content just for the sake of creating content. Like, you see someone else doing it, you're like, oh, we have to do it now too. But it's like, why are you really doing it? And as you rightly said, it is for the customers and not necessarily for the business. Obviously, if customers are happy, then it's good for the business, but that shouldn't be the primary thing. You brought up another good point in terms of regular conversations, in terms of understanding what are the pain points, what keeps them up at night. I think that's always, for me, the best source of content is just really addressing their commonly asked questions or their challenges on a regular basis. Now, one thing I'd really love to get your thoughts on, and this is probably one of the biggest challenges across any market, not just commercial real estate, is differentiation. And you mentioned kind of providing a different point of view, a perspective. How do you go about doing that in your space?
So personally, I think not to toot our own horn too much, but the reason why I actually joined JLL, because I've been watching the company for quite some time. And I've had other opportunities as well with the their competitors. But
Mm.
eventually I chose to join them simply because of the way they are branding themselves and talking about themselves in the market. They are trying to, I mean, we're trying to move beyond just real estate. We're talking about the future of real estate. And of course, we can't say for sure that we know exactly what it is, but we are evolving and we are continuing to learn and to leverage on technology. So we are quite big on innovation, technology, and sustainability in that aspect. Ultimately, it's driving back to our purpose. And that is also why I think what differentiates our company from the rest of our competitor, our purpose of how we want to bring across this purpose, how we want to help our clients to build something different, build a better tomorrow, make a difference in the community. It's not just about selling property, selling a building, leasing a building at the end of the day. And so I think that brings me back to the point of how can companies differentiate themselves. That's really to look at the purpose and to focus on that purpose. When you promote your message across your touch points, it has to come across quite differently. And then of course, when you, for example, you do a video showcase, you go on like recruitment tours, people will be looking at how you are promoting yourselves, what is the purpose that you bring to the table, not just about, okay, how much am I getting paid, am I going to be promoted to senior manager after 2 years, but rather it's also what is the difference that I can make when I join your company. I think that's what the talent of the future nowadays they are looking more at, not just about the dollars and cents anymore, but they want to be part of something bigger and better and more meaningful. So I think JLL, if you're not aware, we have this Achieve Ambitions kind of campaign. We support the mountain climbers who took part in the Olympics. And then we are continuing with this strategy, and we are also looking into more using or featuring the use of property technology or prop tech in our campaign direction. And it will be very clear once we launch our new brand film, which I cannot review. It will be a very pleasant surprise. But yeah, it will be very obvious that we are clearly different from our competitors in the way we are positioning ourselves in that sense. Not just about being hip and trendy, of course, that's an added bonus. But I think it's important to keep our brand and our purpose current and relevant and relatable to the general community, be it from a B2B or B2C perspective, so that we are known beyond just the industry, not just the industry, but we are known beyond a broader spectrum of the end-to-end consumer chain.
Now, there's something I want to dive in a bit deeper. Before that, I think if HR is watching this, like this is an incredible like employer branding video. They should use this at all.
Sorry for that. I can't help
it. HR would be proud. They'd be like, "Let me get a snippet of this. I'll feature on all our channels." Then it's going to be the next your face is going to be on the next recruitment posters and things like that. They're going to be showing snippets and like, "This is why you should join JLL." But no, like I said, it obviously sounds like you're very passionate about the organization, the purpose. I think one of the challenges, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is you mentioned that the purpose is what set you guys apart and the communications. But the challenge with the purpose a lot of times is, as you said, it can be quite broad. And I think where a lot of marketers really struggle is translating that down to actionable things. You talk about some of the pillars, like sustainability, innovation, and technology to some extent. But those same pillars, I was on a call yesterday with the GM of Electrolux, which is the appliance, and he said the exact same pillars. So obviously, obviously the purpose is the company purposes is different. But I'm keen to get your thoughts. How do you actually translate that? How does that funnel down into the way you operate and the way you communicate at the content level?
So I mean, I talk about how it has to be relatable to your target consumer or the end consumer end of the day. So for example, that means for JLL, we are in a real estate consultancy kind of industry. So then day to day, we do advisory, we offer advisory services, we do fit outs, we do tenant management and things like that. So then our purpose means that essentially when we talk about the use of technology, then you'll be, for example, how do you leverage technology in your fit outs, in your office design, when you're looking at like going into taking up a lease, and sustainability likewise. Are you considering sustainability when you talk to your landlords? Like, is it important to you? And we provide that kind of advice. So similarly, when it comes to employee kind of activity, then we will make an effort to support, for example, certain charities or partners that has a more sustainability angle or diversity angle. So at the end of the day, all companies might talk about digital, like innovation, but it will be relatable right down to still being connected back to your solutions, if you want to put it in a very pragmatic manner. And it has to, right? Because ultimately we are still in a business. So whatever that we want to push or promote out there, it will still inevitably tag back to whatever solutions that we are trying to promote. It's just that we're promoting it through all these purpose pillars. It's just that maybe it's not so obvious.
Yeah.
It's more subliminal
Subliminal
messaging.
messaging. Yes.
Yeah.
But no, I think, yeah, to your point, I mean, from purpose to solutions, but in between that, as you said, is the content, is the advisory. Because if not, I think a lot of organizations just jump. They miss out the middle, and that's where they become like a commodity. I think that's where a lot of brands, even larger brands, struggle because they have this, ambitious purpose, whatever it is, and they go straight to talking about products and services and benefit, not even benefits, but just like, here's a list of our offerings, and it's like, that's great, but when you only do that, if you're looking at it from a customer's point of view, they just see a checklist to say, oh, okay, this person does this company does this, and so on and so on. So there's no really additional value add, which you talked about at the beginning in terms of that additional content, additional advisory. And another thing you talked about is in terms of even the the charitable organizations you work with, that obviously has to funnel back. So it helps, I guess, structure a lot of the decisions based on the 3 pillars which you talked about. So it's not just one of those fuzzy things that you're saying, hey, we do innovation, because nowadays everyone says they do innovation.
Yeah. Everybody is like innovative.
Everyone's
innovative. Digitalizing and
exactly. Yeah. Everyone's transforming something or other. I'm like,
yeah.
Everyone's an example. Yeah, exactly. Another thing I want to get your thoughts on, you talked about it at the beginning, is around the office, not politics, but like the way of dealing with other teams. And once again, I think this is a major hurdle with a lot of organizations, because content marketing touches so many aspects. You talked about employer branding, you gave your pitch, which is beautiful. It touches, the sales team, the leadership team. You have to get all these people involved in the process. So it's kind of like, herding sheep a lot of the time. So how do you go about managing those internal kind of relationships and making sure that everyone's on board and aligned?
Of course, it's not possible to please everybody. It's like herding cats. Herding cats to herding sheep, depending on how cooperative and mature the perception of as well towards marketing and the value that we bring. But I always try to put myself in the perspective of the customer as a third party perspective, and try to ring fence it in a way that to make them see that perspective. I see myself as more like an advisor, a consultant, if you want to put it that way. Like at the moment when I'm trying to rally the people, I am not just purely working for JLL, but I'm also representing the clients, and have to keep reminding them that at the end of the day, whatever we push out to the public, they don't care who is it from. They just see us as one company. I think that's the key message, that is like a reminder that constantly I have to keep reminding them, and I think it helps. and I don't take sides. Of course, certain people might not be happy that I said this,
Yeah.
but I think it's very important for support functions like marketing, HR, talent, or finance to have that very neutral approach when managing the stakeholders. And then from there, of course, try to listen to them. I spend a lot more time listening than talking when engaging in all these senior conversations. Because I think ultimately, I mean, these people, they do have quite a lot of perspectives to share. And also it's a way of gaining their trust and helping them to understand that I'm actually there to help them and not to take anybody's side or, help them to get a bigger share of voice. But it's to help the company as a whole. So it takes time, but I think, of course, having good people management and interpersonal skills helps, and getting that trust and building your credibility with like low hanging fruits and kind of like quick wins along the way to show them that this is what you've told me and this is what we've done. I think it helps actually to get them on board faster. So I don't think that's a perfect solution. Even after so long of working more than close to 20 years, is still a constant challenge in all the different organizations that I've been. Yeah, it's always
I could definitely relate. I mean, I had some stints in the corporate world, and I think that was always my biggest challenge. It was not necessarily the work. I think the work was relatively easy and straightforward. I think it was managing all the different stakeholders. I mean, I was in one corporate gig where I think I had like 4 or 5 bosses at one time. So it was kind of like, who do I appease? But I think you bring up 2 really good points, and I want to highlight them. First of which is you can't please everybody. I think that's, as much as we would like to, is everyone be happy. It's not possible, particularly in a larger organization. There are some people who, are gonna feel like they're getting more attention and so on. It's always gonna be that case. But I think to make up for that, you bring up a really good point, which I hadn't heard before, is thinking about yourself as kind of an outside consultant, or at least thinking about it from the customer's point of view. And it's very easy for me to do that because I actually am an outside consultant. So I have the very fortunate privilege of being very blunt with my clients. And then, it doesn't really damage the relationship. I think they expect that. So I think I love the way you approach that. I think it's easier said than done because I've been in that role before. I'm trying to be the voice of the customer, which I love that you're doing. But I also understand like the sensitivities and the challenges of being that kind of outside perspective and trying to give some unbiased feedback, because it at least for me, it felt like I was always kind of walking in a tightrope. Like I felt like if I said something, I would offend this person, or this person would be very happy with me, but like, oh gosh. So I think I could definitely relate to what you're doing, and I think. But you bring up some good points. Like I said, something I try to do as a consultant is really try to listen more than talk. I know I'm speaking right now, but I think it's the basis of a good consultant is just really understanding, like you said, not only the customer's point of view, but also internally, what are some of the interpersonal relationships, who's connected to who, and what are their struggles, or what are their personal challenges, what are they looking to achieve. It's almost like doing the same stakeholder mapping you would do in B2B. If you're trying to get to a new account, a new prospect, you almost have to do internally.
I think marketing's role has evolved so much. It's become more like a project and people stakeholder management role, which takes up about, I think, more than 50% of the time. It's really thinking of how you want to approach this dialogue and this conversation, and then at the back end you need to gather as much intel as possible that you can bring to the conversation and then gain that trust. It's quite interesting and quite dynamic, but I think that's also what makes it like interesting to keep on in this trait, or at least in this role that I'm doing. That's why I really quite enjoy it.
Awesome. Another plug for employer branding right there.
I mean, we have to help them bring that clarity across, because I think some people they like to talk in between the lines. Like you have to keep reading in between the lines. What are they exactly saying? And it's quite surprising sometimes how miscommunication can happen because they are not saying what they are saying in that sense. And we have to
Yeah.
try to decipher and communicate that clearly to everybody else that actually this is what he or she means, and it's not what you or have been thinking all along. So we help to be that bridge and connector between the different business lines.
That's a very good point. I think there's one more thing going back to what you're talking about being kind of the trusted, credible advisor internally. Is one of the challenges a lot of people have is, for marketing, you often have to collaborate with subject matter experts. Or, it could be the leadership team, it could be, the research team, whoever it is. What some clients of mine have found difficult is really getting them on board to co-create content. So whether it's featuring them in interviews or videos or podcasts or whatever formats you're using, it's often difficult if you are not in a marketing or sales space where you tend to be more extroverted or at least have good communication skills. How do you bring in those folks, those subject matter experts on board to actually help create the content with you?
Yeah, so first, I would like to have an understanding of the person first to see what is his or her preference in terms of providing content or how involved they want to be. Some people, they're really just happy to be at the back end, providing that whatever context you need, and then then you get to take it away and rejig it and put somebody else's name on it. Yeah. Some are happy with that, and then some really, they actually just want to verbalize everything. They're not comfortable to see anything in print because they're afraid that they'll be bound by it and look foolish or something. Where some, they really just want to put their name on every single thing, or just be it good or bad, and like even bad PR is good PR. That sort of, sounds like Donald Trump, right? But
yeah,
that kind of approach. So it's really trying to, of course, I can't please everybody still at the end of the day, but where it makes sense, I try as much as possible to cater to their preference and play to their strength. Like, for example, if their strength is really in just providing that research, that text, and then I'll try to get somebody else to headline that piece and be the spokesperson instead. But then for certain position, they don't have a choice, because if they are business leaders and they need to be profiled, then really it's really that's where I'll put my foot down and say that, if you don't, then you're unheard of, and that's not gonna hold well for you personally from your personal reputation and branding perspective. And then try to give them some examples of how their competitors are doing that much better than them, sort of like giving them a little bit of pressure from the external and helping them to see why it's so important. It takes time to coach and nurture the people to be ready, but so far I think almost everybody has been quite happy to provide that content. In fact, although they might appear reluctant on the surface, but they're secretly pleased from their behavior, as I can see. They'll be whining and complaining, but then they will still give it to you like at the end of the day, and then be secretly pleased when their quotes get published on the papers, or got picked up somewhere else. So these are the little victories, I think, and that will help them, that will keep encouraging them to work with you more and more.
Beautifully said. I just want to kind of unpack what you said, because I think it's really good. The first of which is, say, understanding the different perspectives, how they want to get involved. And you kind of mentioned 3 buckets. The first bucket is those who kind of want to stay behind the scenes and maybe provide research or quotes. Those who are maybe, if you think of it as like a bell curve, I'm envisioning a bell curve where you have some people on the left side where they they're super excited and they'll say, yeah, I'll do yes to everything. You have the middle, which are kind of on the fence. You're like, yeah, you have to kind of like tip them over on one side or the other. And then you have those who are kind of always reluctant, who prefer, like you said, to be behind the scenes, but still like to pitch in. But I think you brought up a really good point. But at the end of the day, for all those 3 people in the buckets, is that everyone craves appreciation. Everyone desires that kind of acknowledgement. And whether or not you are the face of something, or you were the person who provided the insights in the back end, once you put out a good piece of content, and obviously the reaction is good, then they, like you said, feel that sense of fulfillment, even if they'll never be even they'll always be the reluctant. They'll always stay in that side where they'll always be reluctant. So I think that's a good point to mention. The other thing that I thought was really good, and is in terms of profiling people. Now, I'm a big believer that commercial real estate, the brand is one thing, but you tick a box. What people really buy is the people within the brand. So, for example, the leaders or the agents or whoever they're dealing with on a regular basis. So, what are you guys doing to kind of profile your people? You mentioned kind of featuring them in, some of the research reports or maybe some of the content you're doing, but how else are you really leveraging your main asset, which are the people?
So of course, I think media profiling, social media increasingly, I think that's a big push of how we are trying to leverage these people. So helping them to build up their social media profile on LinkedIn, especially because we are very B2B in focused. So we need to position them as subject matter experts in their respective fields, but it cannot be forced. It has to come from actually what is their passion, both professionally and personally. And then we'll map out like those topics that are suitable based on their interest and their passion and expertise, and try to sort of like create shorter articles, shorter blogs, and also pitch for interviews, bylines for them, and also speaking opportunities at some of the big industry events or client events. I think ultimately is to put them out there as much as possible to become the spokespeople of the company, and also, as and when there's an opportunity to articulate the purpose of the company, bringing back the conversation around purpose, because these are the ambassadors, basically. I think gone are the days where we used to have the newspapers quoting PR people in their content and articles. Nowadays, I think journalists don't want to hear from the corporates, PR people anymore. They want to hear from your CEO. They want to hear from your head of research, your head of business lines. Yes, because that makes the conversation more real and genuine. So that's I think a big part. So they are our content spokespeople, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, I can completely relate to both sides. I think from the writer side, when I was working with Forbes, I think I tried to avoid, even though I came from a PR background most of my career, I tried to avoid the PR people because
corporate spill.
Yeah, because I knew all the tricks of the trade. So it's one of those things. After talking a while, it's like, look, I know kind of how it works. I've done this for many years. So yeah, I always try to go directly to the CEO or at least the head of the department to find out kind of real point of view. But I think it goes back to your point, and this is where I think I've done a lot of work in this space, is really helping executives and professionals build their brand, because it's one of those things that I'm a perfect example. I shouldn't be given the opportunities that I've been given working with Fortune 500 companies, but it's just been kind of an after effect of the brand I've been able to do and the opportunities and so on. And I think that's one thing I'm very passionate about on my side, is just helping executives, because it can not only transform the organization, but it also transforms their career. I think it gives them so many new opportunities. Like we're saying, a lot of times people don't understand like all the media opportunities, the speaking opportunities, the new clients, the new pipeline that accrues just because people know you. It's an incredible thing that I don't think a lot of people really understand the power of it until you have a couple that do, and then like you said, you may say, that person, look what that person's doing, or look the kind of attention they're getting. And it's a double-edged sword, I think, for some organizations, because they're always like, if we train them too well and they're too powerful, then they're going to leave us, so they're going to ask it. Like, I'm always like, look, that could be the case for anything. Like, if you don't train them, like, what's the result? The result is they're going to be frustrated. They're going to leave anyways because they don't feel like they're learning or they're appreciated anyways. So I'm always a big believer in people who say, you know what, we shouldn't train them because they're going to leave us. I had one company tell me that recently. I'm like, well, I was like, they probably don't like your company to begin with. Otherwise, And anyone I know, if you give them the opportunity, like you said, to empower them with the skills and the know-how to build their brand, they're going to be more than happy. I mean, I got that experience earlier in my career, and I love the companies because of that. And I left those that didn't give me the opportunity. So I think it has a positive impact on so many different things, not only their lives, but also you talked about kind of the business, the bottom line, as well as retention. So it has this residual effect in all these different departments. And I think, yeah, that's why I'm very passionate about working with B2B companies in a similar capacity, just helping them, because I've seen the impact it has.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? If you don't train them, you don't put in any effort to help them build their profile, then they won't be known in the market. They won't be, you know, meeting the right decision makers, and then they will want to leave. And I guess the worst thing would be if you don't train them and they are not good or whatsoever, and they just keep staying on.
Yeah.
Isn't that worse? Isn't that
Yeah.
worse than them leaving because they are really good? So it's actually, I think that is a positive spin on the company. Actually, is you groom somebody so well that they got poached. You know, they companies shouldn't take it that badly or negatively. They should take it as a compliment. It's like, thank you to the competitor who poached the person. You know, I gave you years. I devoted years of investment on that person, and he turned out so well. So who knows? He might actually eventually come back still.
Yeah.
To join and take on a different position. So I think in this kind of cyclical world, anything is possible.
Absolutely. I love that way of thinking. Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm going to use this in all my presentations going forward, because I think you're absolutely right. You know, if you don't train someone and they're terrible and they stay, like that has a far more worse effect. It just kind of weighs down the entire department. Whereas you have a bunch of high flyers, and say one high flyer goes, you still have, you know, a group of high flyers who still can perform. So I'm with you 100%. I wish more people would hear this message and it resonate with them, because I think you're absolutely right. Makes perfect sense. It's one of those things. Like I said, this has been extremely insightful. I've really enjoyed it. I really appreciate you kind of coming on and sharing your insights and experience. I've learned a lot, so thank you for that.
Thank you. I mean, I learned a lot from you as well. Like, you've shared pretty good insights too. So appreciate it. Appreciate for the opportunity.
Yes, no worries, my pleasure. And last question is, how can people get in touch with you or find out more about what you do?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Just hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. Yeah.
I'm laughing because I just interviewed the marketing director for LinkedIn, and I was like, this is going to be a rhetorical question, but where can people find you? He's like, LinkedIn, of course. Like, I gotta ask. I already know the answer, but I gotta ask, because people are going to ask me, blah, 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 blah. So yes, LinkedIn. So yes, if you're watching this, please connect with Jaslyin or follow her on LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll learn a lot about not only content marketing, but also the commercial real estate space in general. So Jaslyin, thank you so much again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
If you enjoyed today's session and you want to share it, please feel free to do so. I think there's a lot of really good insights, not only from a marketing point of view, but I think also for HR and employer branding, some really good points that she brought up. So please feel free to share that and let us know if you have any further questions. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. So thank you so much and take care.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye.